Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Urban Aviary. I hope you guys are getting revved up for spring wherever you're at like we are here. You know, we've hatched out 2 or 3 batches of birds already, and hoping that you guys have full incubators too and get good hatch rates this spring. Let's get into it. Let's talk about something here. My job here at the Urban Aviary is to help you guys raise quail, help you guys get into raising quail, right? And the reason I felt like I needed to get into this, I listened to a podcast episode several years ago, and I don't even remember what it was. It's some chicken podcast, and they had some gal on talking about quail to come and tell their audience about quail and raising quail. And it really bothered me how much she was trying to bring up things that really or say things were an issue that weren't really an issue, or trying to make it seem more complicated and involved than it really is. And I thought, if you're really trying to get people to do this, why are you saying some of this stuff? I mean, a lot of it's just stuff that you really don't even need to be worried about. It's just unnecessary stuff, and I hear the same things from a lot of other people. Apparently, people listen to people like this. We live in a world that makes us paranoid about trying new things. Okay, and a lot of times those new things that we want to try, we feel paranoid about because there are people that are self-proclaimed experts on a subject that do exactly this. Okay, they make things seem more complicated than they really are, and give out a lot of information that, can make people feel overwhelmed. Okay, and a lot of times I think this is because they need to feel self-important. Right? They need to feel like this thing that's their thing is something that is a personal part of them, and they need to make it feel like they're an expert at it by making it more complicated, if that makes sense. Now, I've never done this to you guys before, nor will I ever do that. Okay, that's not how we do things here at the Urban Aviary. I don't have an ego that I need to fill like some people do. I just want you guys to get involved raising quail. I just want more people to raise quail. And not just so you guys will come buy my products, but I actually believe it's really important to be doing this because I believe it's important to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and to raise your own quality food. And I believe it's just important for somebody living in an apartment in the city to do that and to be able to do that as it is for somebody with 100 acres out in the country in the middle of nowhere. Not everybody has the ability to raise a lot of animals and grow a lot of crops like I do here on my property. And I have not forgotten what that was like living in the city and having to get creative and being limited on what I could do. And that's a big reason why we moved to this bigger property, is because I wanted to show you guys more things that you could do. There are so many things you can do in a small space, but you can't obviously do it all because you are limited on space. And I had lots of ideas and things I want to do. And now on this property, I mean, I could go and just raise sheep and lots of ducks and chickens and do a lot of crazy stuff, but that's not really something you guys can do. So I haven't forgotten where I came from when I made this journey here and started doing agricultural stuff, and I want other people to be able to do that. I don't want everybody back in the city to be left in the dust. So that's why I do this. That's why this is important to me. But anyways, let's talk about some of the hang-ups that people have when starting to raise quail or considering raising quail, okay? Number one is this idea that they're in a cage. They're not going to be happy in a cage. I can't raise quail in a cage. Okay, I find this really interesting because I hear people, poo-poo this idea of quail in a cage, but I don't ever hear anybody complaining about rabbits in a cage. It's perfectly well accepted that rabbits live happily in cages, and people raise them for meat, and nobody seems to think that's a problem. The thing people need to realize is these quail have been raised for 2,000-3,000 plus years to be bred and live in cages. And not only that, not only have they been bred for this purpose and are they happy there, but when you actually take them and put them in like an aviary situation, I've done this myself, I know this from experience. You put them in an aviary and they still all stay together and huddle together in a small space. Sure, they'll move around, and now they have a little more space, they'll venture out a little bit further, but they feel safe together in their little group, in their covey, right? They're ground dwelling creatures and they feel comfortable being together. And it's not like, they're not people. All right, there's this problem, I'm trying to get too deep in this, but this thing is called anthropomorphism. which means adding or attributing human attributes to non-human things. In this instance, it's animals. People say, well, you wouldn't want to be shoved in a room with 10 of your other friends in a small space and be stuck there and not be able to go anywhere. I'm like, well, yeah, but we live differently than they do. We're safe how we live. Quail naturally want to be like that because there's safety in numbers, and if a predator attacks, they feel a lot safer being that close together. It's natural for them, okay? They're not people. We got to be able to, we can still treat them right and respect them and give them a wonderful life, but you know, they're not people. Okay, I'm sorry, they're not people. They're not the same as us. They don't feel the same, think the same. They just don't. Oh, the second thing, and I've talked about this before, and I don't want to hash it over too much, but I know I'm going to probably rant on it. It's this idea of my cages. The height of my cages has got to be right because I don't want quail to jump up and break their necks. Okay, I'm not going to go and rant like I have in a previous video about how silly that is, the idea of breaking necks, okay? Sure, they can jump up and they can get hurt. You're never going to break her neck. If anybody's ever pulled the head off a quail trying to process a quail, I've got more muscle, more power in the muscles of my arms that it takes for me to process a quail and pull that head off or break that neck than a quail has in its body, even with the added momentum and everything. I'm sorry, that they can hit their heads on the cage and get whatever it is, brain damage, or get somehow hurt that way, and it can kill them, sure. But even the people that breed them, big time breeders that I've talked to and know, it's happened once or twice that they've known of in the entire career of doing it. It's super rare, and it is a silly reason to not raise quail. Okay, you don't have to worry about your cage heights. It doesn't happen that often, and it's a self-correcting problem. If a bird jumps up once and hits its head, I know they're not very intelligent creatures, but they're not dumb enough to keep doing it over and over until they kill themselves. Okay, they're not that dumb. Another one is calcium, right? People are worried they can't find calcium. It's hard to find a quail layer feed. The reason you need calcium is to supplement how much calcium they're putting out by laying eggs, okay? So people worry about, I can't get oyster shell around where I'm at, it's expensive. Well, here's the thing, most people are slaughtering their quail at a year, okay? They're not keeping them for years and years, but you can keep them for a few years and get good laying out of them. But if you're doing what most people do and you're slaughtering them after a year for food, you don't really need to worry about making sure that you have calcium. If you have it available to you in a feed or whatever, then great, go for it. But if you just absolutely can't, don't let that be the hang-up that stops you, okay? They need calcium, especially if you're doing it for a long time. But if you're only going to slaughter them in a year and going to get one season of laying out of them, then you don't need to worry about it, okay? The calcium does help keep the eggs stronger. So when they roll down into egg trays and stuff, they're less likely to crack. But it's not the end of the world if you don't have calcium. Don't let that be a hang-up, okay? That shouldn't be a hang-up for not raising quail. Okay. Next one is I can't find jumbos, or I've got to find jumbos, and people get hung up worried about whether or not they're going to be able to find good jumbo birds. Okay, I've said in a previous video there's no such thing as jumbos. I want to tell you what I mean by that. I don't think I conveyed that as very good in my last video that I talked about this in. And that's that jumbos is really, I guess there's no national organization that you know has stipulations on what constitutes a jumbo, like other birds might have stipulations for chickens or ducks or whatever. But it's generally accepted in the quail world that 10 to 15 ounces for an adult bird is a jumbo. Anything 10 ounces and above is a jumbo. Now, the problem why I have such a problem with the word jumbo is because anybody can say my birds are a jumbo, and people don't understand that that's the 10 to 15 ounces. So anybody can say, yeah, my birds are jumbo. You go and pick up some chicks, take them home, and then you realize after you've raised them up, oh my gosh, these birds are like 7-8 ounces, right? You got small birds. You don't need to worry about the label jumbo. Don't worry about, you know, I've got to find somebody that's selling jumbo. Find somebody that's selling birds that have the right weight, okay? 10 to 15 ounces. Ask them what their average weight is, or just buy from a reputable breeder, okay? But don't worry about getting hung up on the jumbo label, okay? When we get into distinguishing between different breeds, I hear people ask, what's the best breed for meat and what's the best one for eggs? And I think people don't realize that Coturnix quail are not like chickens, okay? Chicken breeds can vary greatly, okay, in size, color, temperament, attitude, egg laying ability, cold and heat tolerance. I mean, they can vary greatly. Okay, the thing about Coturnix quail, we're talking about the difference between a black lab, a chocolate lab, a yellow lab. All right, they're not the color differentiation, and it doesn't really matter for what traits they have. It's all on the specific bird. But also each specific bird, even though in these different breeds, they have different breeds, different colorations and stuff, they're all really the same. There's not really one coloration or one, an A&M isn't the best necessarily for meat. A certain type isn't best for laying eggs. They're all generally, relatively the same. Okay, you might have one line that's been bred specifically to be a little bit better at laying eggs or be a little bit bigger bird or whatever. That has nothing to do with the feather color or the breed. That has to do with just that line of birds and their genetics. Okay, so don't get caught up on that stuff. Just get what you either like for colors, or find the biggest bird you can to get the biggest eggs and the most meat. Okay, here's a good one. Something I see all the time is people worried about cross-contaminating birds with chickens, or keeping quail with chickens, or keeping birds together because they can pass diseases back and forth and yada yada yada. And I don't want my whole quail flock to get wiped out because one got sick and then they all got sick. Okay, yeah, it's true. Diseases can pass between species, between birds, and sure, I mean that's a possibility. But you know what I hear a lot of? I hear a lot of worrying and people talking about that. You get on forums, get online, and tons of people are talking about what to do to make sure that doesn't happen and be careful. But you know what I've never heard? Story of somebody that's had their whole flock lost to disease. Okay, I mean, sure, anything can happen. Birds could get sick. I mean, keep your birds separate if you're worried about it. But I mean, if you're deciding whether or not you want to put your chickens and quail together, it's not the fact that you put chickens and quail together, it's that you put two birds together that were sick. So don't put sick birds with other birds. All right, that's the easy solution to the problem. Sure, they can pass diseases back and forth. Anything can happen. You get out of bed tomorrow, you could drive to work and get hit by a cement truck, and your problems will be over. Okay, anything can happen, but are you going to let that stop you from getting out of bed in the morning? Come on. What if I do something wrong and I kill my birds? What if people are always worried I'm going to screw up and kill them? And be completely honest with you here, guys. Quail are easier to take care of than a dog. They're easier to take care of than a cat. I used to have rats, and I would say they're easier to take care of than a rat is. I mean, they're maybe a little more difficult than taking care of a goldfish. Like, I'm not exaggerating. They're not difficult to raise. You're not going to kill them. They're very resilient birds. Another thing people worry about is the heat and cold. Can they tolerate the heat and cold? They're very tolerant to heat and cold. Don't worry about killing your birds. I mean, if a couple of them, if something happens to a couple of them, it's part of life. It's part of the learning process. It happens. All you can do is do your best. Don't let that be a hang up. I mean, the heat and cold tolerance thing, I mean, this is the thing people don't realize about chickens. They wouldn't worry about this with their chickens. People don't worry about their chickens getting cold. It gets down 20 below here. I don't worry about any supplemental heat for my chickens. Never thought of it. Certainly not for my ducks. But the chickens, I definitely don't worry about that. But they're a tropical bird. I mean, they come from, some are from South America. They're jungle fowl, is what they're called, before they were domesticated, right? I'm not super knowledgeable on chickens, but believe it's South America, Philippines, somewhere, some places like that where they come from. They're originally a tropical bird, okay? The Muscovy ducks that I have, they're a duck from South America. They're a jungle swamp bird. They're not used to cold temperatures, but they do just fine here. Quail are the same way. They're a tropical bird from Japan. They do great in the heat, as long as you've got ventilation, airflow, and they've got access to water. They're going to be okay. All right, they're not going to get too hot as long as you're not keeping them inside a garage with absolutely no airflow, and it's just beaten down in the Arizona sun, and you have no way to give them water and get airflow to keep them cooled off a little bit, right? And cold, good grief, it's been single digits and below zero here. My birds are fine. I've never had a bird freeze to death. They're perfectly fine. They're not going to have issues, and there's easy ways to supplement that if you want to keep them cool or keep them warmer. That's a pretty easy problem to solve too. What last one I'll talk about is predators. What if a predator gets my bird? Because predation is a problem no matter where you're going to have birds, even if you're in the city, even if it's just raccoons or rats. But the thing is, there's precautions that can be taken. You make sure you try and have shelter and housing for the quail, whether you keep them in a garage or inside of something else. If you're just keeping the cages out in the open and keep them covered from the rain, then use the right kind of wire meshing. Yeah, raccoons and rats can always get their hands in to grab a bird, but I mean, it's a risk that you take, and if something like that happens, you take care of the critter, you take care of the pest, and you learn from the experience. And if you have to replace a few birds, you replace a few birds. But I mean, the idea that that's something to hold you back is only if you've got quail and you keep having the same animal come back over and over and just killing all your birds over and over. Well, obviously you've given it no reason to not come and get a free meal, so take care of that problem. There's better solutions to each problem than just avoiding the experience altogether. I mean, there's lots of other things that I know people have hangups for, and if you have any that you know of that you feel like me, tell me, because I'd like to hear other people's. Or if you're somebody in that boat that's going, I'm worried about this or that, don't feel bad. All right, there's lots of people out there telling you should worry about it. If you go online and search it, you will always find people that are worried about it and telling you what you should be worried about. Okay, it's not hard. If you've ever had a dog or a cat, you're gonna be fine with quail. Okay, if you've ever had a goldfish, it's a step up. You'll be just fine. I promise. Don't be worried about it though. This is a crazy world we live in, where we feel like we're made to feel like things are more complicated than they are, and things are hard, and we need to worry about all these different things. And don't get caught up in that analysis paralysis. All right, it's not difficult. Just try it, and you'll learn as you go. You'll learn most of the stuff that I teach you guys. If you do this, anybody that starts watching my channel, gets into it and does it for a little while, you'll realize everything that I've taught you guys and more. Okay, experience is the best teacher, but you'll realize, yeah, this really wasn't all that hard, and there's nothing to it. So I hope that helps you guys out some. Let me know if you have any other things like that you know of that you can think of, because I really like to hear what the hangups are for this stuff, because like I said, I really want people to get involved in doing this and raising quail. I think this is important for people to be self-reliant and provide their own food. And not only that, quail are fun. They're good ways to teach kids about the circle of life and how to be responsible, and there's a lot of cool things that quail bring to the table for individuals and for families. So that'll be all there is for this video. Remember, you guys can check out the website. It's up and going. I do have quail eggs, hatching eggs for sale to be shipped out. If you're interested in that, get on the website. Spring, like I said, is here. It is the season. So take a look at that and the other stuff on the website there. And remember, until that next video, you guys can do this too.